Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. This is John McDougall with Murder by the Book, coming to you with another virtual event. We are so excited tonight to have Mary Kay Andrews with us, and Karin Slaughter has graciously agreed to interview her. If the chat is anything like what I just got to hang out with them before we got started, you guys in for a treat. We should have a lot of fun tonight. As you guys know, I'm a huge Mary Kay Andrews fan. A couple of years ago, I binge read all the Callahan Garrity books except one. I'm saving that one. Because I still want there to be one. The newcomer just came out today. We're so excited. We have copies in store. We also have signed copies. So if you order, we've got signed copies, and we have a handful of these really cool newcomer like hotel room keychains. So if you have not ordered from us already, you can order at murderbooks.com. We are open for browsing. So if you haven't come to visit us in a while, make sure you come check us out. Understand that not everybody is getting out and about in the world just yet. So if you're not comfortable coming into the store, you can give us a call. We can help you out over the phone, and we can run books out to you once you show up. If you have questions tonight while Kathy and Karin are charting, or Mary Kay and Karin are chatting, you can post those in the comments, and we will get to those in a little bit. Also wanted to mention, I'm seeing lots of comments pop up, so I'm excited to see what we've got. A lot of people joining us already. Sometimes with the virtual events, we'll have some spam comments pop up. So if you see anything asking you to click away from the event to watch it and put your credit card info, ignore that. I will block and ban those people as soon as they pop up. But sometimes people are just a little bit faster with their clicking buttons than I am with my blocking button. So I'm going to get us started tonight. Like I said, we're going to be chatting with Mary Kay Andrews, whose new book, The Newcomer, has just come out today. Let's bring her on. How are you tonight?
I'm great, especially great to be with you. I mean, it would be better if we were in person having margaritas.
Yes.
But this is as close as we can get this year.
Yeah, this will work until we can do it. Yeah, it's weird. Like, we didn't see you last year because the pandemic was happening. So it's always weird for a new book to come out and us not get to see you in Houston.
I know, and it's sad for me because we have our little rituals, right?
Yep.
We go for margaritas. I have a cousin who lives in the Houston area, and I see him. But this is what happened. I mean, we're getting out. I'm getting out a little bit, tiptoeing out. But
yeah, we're starting to hear, and we're starting to talk. Nobody quote me on this because I'll deny it, but we're starting to look at potentially, maybe doing an author event here or there in the fall with people in store, local things like that. So we're starting to look at kind of what that might actually look like. So hopefully we're going to be able to start turning the corner on this soon and get people back in the store and kind of get some sense of kind of normalcy.
I hope so.
Yeah. So for anybody who's tuning in who might not know, Mary Kay Andrews is the New York Times bestselling author of The Beach House Cookbook and more than 20 novels, including The Weekenders, Ladies' Night, Spring Fever, Summer Rental, The Fixer-Upper, Deep Dish, Blue Christmas, Savannah Breeze, Hissy Fit, Little Bitty Lies, and Savannah Blues. A former journalist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, she lives in Atlanta, Georgia. And as I mentioned, we're super excited tonight to have Karin Slaughter with us. And we're going to bring Karin out. How are you tonight, Karin?
Very well, thank you.
Thanks for doing this with us.
I didn't have a choice.
So everybody, Karin's new book is called False Witness. It is not out just yet. It's going to be out on July 20th. We will have signed copies, so if you have not yet pre-ordered, you can pre-order a signed copy from us. I will drop a link in the comments in just a few minutes to let you know where you can order that from us. But before we get started, let me get Karin officially introduced. Karin Slaughter is one of the world's most popular and acclaimed storytellers, published in 120 countries with more than 35 million copies sold across the globe. Her 20 novels include the Grant County and Will Trent books, as well as the Edgar-nominated Cop Town and the instant New York Times bestselling novels Pretty Girls, The Good Daughter, Pieces of Her, and The Last Widow. Slaughter is the founder of the Save the Libraries Project, a nonprofit organization established to support libraries and library programming. A native of Georgia, she lives in Atlanta. Her standalone novel, Pieces of Her, in production with Netflix, starring Toni Collette, and the Grant County and Will Trent series are in development for television. So as I mentioned, if you guys have questions for Karin or Mary Kay while we were chatting, please post those in the comments. I'm going to turn it over to you, Karin, and let you guys chat, and I will see you in just a little bit.
Thank you. Hi, Mary Kay Andrews. I might slip up and call you Kathy. I know that since you've been in witness protection that you have to go by Mary Kay.
That's my alias, yeah. My street name is Cavassier.
So, how did we meet? Did Dodd-Frank introduce us? Am I remembering that right? Or was it so long ago?
it might have been at at a SEBA.
Makes sense.
On Jekyll Island, or it could have been at a library event that you spearheaded in Decatur. Karin and I, by the way, live like, I don't know what, 2 miles apart?
Maybe.
But
too close.
The guard towers outside of her house are intimidating. So basically I just send threatening emails all the time.
Right. Well, you did leave me cookies once. I did because you did me a great favor. So I left you a cookie, a giant, pan-sized cookie, as I recall. Oh, I thought it was a single serve.
Well, depends.
Huh. That explains a lot. I looked you up on Wikipedia as my research.
Lies, all lies.
It doesn't say where you were born. Where were you born?
Oh, St. Pete, Florida.
Oh, so you're a Florida woman.
I'm a native Floridian. Yeah.
I'm a native Floridian. So while I was hanging out in my crib in 76, you were at UGA.
I was.
Do they still have a journalism school at UGA?
They do.
Why'd you go into journalism? To get out of Florida?
I always wanted to be a writer. From the time I was an early reader, and my parents both read the daily paper, the St. Pete Times at that time. Now it's the Tampa Bay Times. It was a great crusading newspaper. What I loved about it when I was in high school was they would put politicians in jail. They would do these great
the good old days.
The good old days. They would do these great exposés. And I just always wanted to be a writer. And I thought, well, I'll be a newspaper reporter. So my father, oddly enough, would not let me go to the University of Florida because it was too wild.
True.
So instead, he sent me to the University of Georgia, which was calm.
So that would have been, when was Ted Bundy in Florida?
One of my oldest, dearest friends was in a sorority at Florida State when Ted Bundy committed some of his murders. So, she still gets shivers down her spine when she thinks about it.
Isn't that terrifying? And, I didn't realize this, but I knew he was, but also the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, was stopped for a speeding violation. So it's like they get caught because they don't have a registered plate or, a lights out, something like that. And some cop just happens to have a notorious serial killer.
Yeah. And normally what happens is if you're a presentable looking white guy, they, maybe give you a warning or pat you on the back and you talk football and they go on their way and do some more crimes. But there are some lucky ones.
Yes. So you were at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution with, at the time of Louis Grizzard, and Ann Rivers Sidden. Is that correct?
No, Ann had worked for Atlanta Magazine, actually.
Oh, okay.
So and that was like before my time. And Louis actually worked, he was a columnist, but he didn't come to the paper. He had an assistant, and he didn't care to learn how to use a computer. So he could type. So he would call in his column to his assistant, and she would type it into the computer, and it would go through editing.
And for people who don't know, Louis Grizzard also wrote novels like Shoot Low, Boys, They're Riding Shetland Ponies.
Well, not novels. He wrote collections of columns.
Well, collections, yeah. And so they always come out around Father's Day. So my dad would get a Louis Grizzard book every Father's Day, and he would pretend to read it. I think he more loved the lifestyle of the smoking and drinking, and that worked out great. So have you ever been fired from a job?
I haven't.
Never. I'm going to fire you right now.
I fired myself as my own cleaning lady.
Wow. Because
I had a bad attitude and I was drinking on the job. So I fired myself from that. But
that's a good idea.
No, it's kind of, I'm Catholic, and Catholic girls mostly do what they're told.
I thought you were going to say masturbate in the bathtub. Okay. Totally.
Here we go.
Okay, go ahead.
We have a fear of getting in trouble. So I followed the rules up to a point, but it was a point of pride for me for a long time that I never got fired from a job. But then I got sick of newspapers and tunneled my way out.
Aren't you glad? Because now it's very different.
30 years ago this week, I left newspapers.
Gosh, I was just going into kindergarten then.
Bitch.
So like we started out, we call you Kathy because that was your name previously. Kathy.
It's still my name.
When you wrote mysteries?
Yes.
And why did you write, what made you do that? What made you write a mystery?
I mean, besides the outstanding warrants?
Yeah.
Well, I grew up reading mystery. I was a big fan of, like a lot of girls of my generation, I read Nancy Drew. But my grandfather was a great reader of pulp fiction. And so every Sunday we'd go to my grandparents for dinner. And we got ready to leave. He would hand my mother a big brown paper grocery sack full of Mickey Spillane and Earl Stanley Garner pulp fiction novels. And my mother didn't have any rules about what you could or couldn't read. So I was reading Mickey Spillane at like 10 and Earl Stanley Garner, which, was Perry Mason. And I loved those stories. I didn't understand it. Every time Mickey Spillane, Mike Hammer, would go out to do something and he'd come home and there would be a nude blonde in his bed. And I can remember thinking, why doesn't he just lock the door? It didn't occur to me that Mike Hammer might be okay with finding nude blondes in his bed. So I loved mysteries and I started reading Agatha Christie, which was very different, but
no nude blondes in her bed that we know of.
Vickers. There were Vickers and that kind of thing. And then when I was a newspaper reporter, I did cover the crime beat for a while, cops and courts, we used to call it. And I was always fascinated with that. So when I started tunneling out of newspapers, I thought I'll write mysteries because that's what I was reading. I was reading Sue Grafton, and I was reading Sarah Paretsky, Sue Grafton, Sarah Paretsky, Marcia Muller, wonderful women writers who were kind of trailblazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started doing that. And then I had an idea. After I did 10 of those, I had an idea for a different book. It was still going to be a mystery, I thought. But I wanted to set it in Savannah. My Callahan Garrity series was set in Atlanta with a former Atlanta police detective. And Callahan was in the robbery, crimes against property, the property crimes division that they called it at the time at the Atlanta PD. But she couldn't get promoted to homicide because at the time I started writing this series, there were no, this is bizarre to me. At that time, in the late 80s, there were no female homicide cops in the largest in the largest homicide department in the southeastern United States. And so I thought Callahan would be frustrated. She, the pecking order in the police department is a homicide detective. That's the top of the pecking order. And she, no matter how good she was never going to get there. So she quits the department and she gets a PI license, but she still really can't get any good gigs because she hasn't been a homicide cop. So she buys a cleaning business. So I wrote 8 of those and it was a lot of fun. And then I had an idea for a book that was set in Savannah with a woman who was an antique dealer. I love antiques. And it wasn't a Callahan novel. It was set in Savannah. And I thought about using a pseudonym because mystery readers are so brand conscious.
Truth.
They only want you to write a Callahan Garrity, or if you're Sarah Paretsky, they only want to be I. Warshawski, or I guess if you're reading a Karin Slaughter for a while, you only want a Grant County or a Will Trent. You
just want guts.
You want gore.
Sex.
Yeah.
Well, not gore, guts.
Right.
I'm responsible.
Okay. So I thought I'll write it under a pseudonym, and the pseudonym is a combination of my kids' names. And my thought was, well, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to being Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
But to my amazement, and my publisher, HarperCollins, Karen's publisher also.
Yeah.
To my amazement, the first Mary Kay Andrews, Savannah Blues, outsold all of the Callahans combined right off the bat. And they didn't sell it as a mystery. After I handed it in, my editor said, well, we're not going to sell it as a mystery. We're just going to sell it as,
a book.
Commercial fiction. Yeah, commercial fiction. And so when it's outsold Callahan, I thought, okay, maybe this is going to work. So for a while I was doing kind of rom-coms, which I still love. And then a few years ago, I changed editors and houses, and I went to St. Martin's Press, and my editor, Jen Enderlin, I did some books that had a mystery in them, but they weren't really a mystery. And a few years ago, when I wrote The Weekenders, Jen said to me, I want you to write a book called The Weekenders. You could be about whatever you want. I just like that title. And she kind of said it in an offhanded way. And if you want, you can put in a body. And I said, oh, okay. So I've been flinging bodies right and left ever since.
Yeah. So when people first meet you, what kind of books do they assume you write when you say you're a writer?
Oh, I don't know what they think when they see me. I mean, I look like someone's aunt.
True.
I look.
But the cool aunt, like the one who's totally okay with you banging a couple of guys and slipping back after dark.
I don't think they think that at all.
I'm trying to help you here.
I know, but unfortunately, with this fat face, I look like someone's nice neighbor or aunt or whatever. And so when I occasionally drop the occasional F-bomb, they're horrified.
Are you talking about fuck or motherfucker?
When I drop one of those or fling one of those, if I'm really angry, I don't just drop it, I fling it. Then they kind of went, whoa. They go, oh, who is this woman?
Auntie Mary's upset. Well, why did you choose the beach? Was it to be able to write off all these visits to the beach in your beach house? Kind of like Donna Leone and,
Yeah, but I'm not in Venice.
Right. But, you pick a place where you're like, I need to research the crap out of this. Let me get a place there. Is that why you did it?
I was running away. I hardly ever get out to it because I'm writing. When my kids were young, and I've been writing a book a year for 30 years. When my kids were young, I would run away to write. I had met Terry Kay, the late Terry Kay. We miss him. And he used to rent an apartment when he was working on a book. He was married, happily married for many, many years, dad, granddad. And I thought, well, that's the craziest thing I ever heard of. Why would you have to rent an apartment? But when I'm working on a book and I'm deep into it, I need to have my head in the world of the book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need any distractions. I don't need anybody asking me for dinner or whatever. So I would run away, and the closest beach to Atlanta, where you and I live, was Tybee Island. And so
that's not really a beach. It's just a bunch of broken seashells.
Come on now. It's a beach.
Okay.
I would, rent a little tiny cottage. And I kept saying, if we had a house on Tybee, I could run away here to write, and then maybe the rest of the time we have it as a vacation rental house. So, we bought our first one and redid it, and I named it after a motel in Savannah Breeze. So the first one we did was 12 years ago, the Breeze Inn. And we've been, coming down. The family comes down, and I come down without the family, and I hole up, and I make a pot of spaghetti the first night I'm here. And I eat spaghetti every night and drink wine. I can have a glass of wine after I meet my page quota. And I don't watch television or do anything except write books. What's your routine like?
It's very similar, except I make vegetable soup, like in a crock pot. Yeah, and I eat it for lunch and dinner.
Yeah,
and then, but I don't drink, as you know.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, no, I just don't. It's not my thing. I'd much rather have a cupcake for those calories.
Okay.
And yeah, that's all I do. But do you find, like, I get asked a lot of times, well, do you have children? Are you married? And the guys never get asked that.
No, never.
But no one would say to Terry K when he was alive, well, how can you leave your family to do that? Right. Did you face that, or was it just me saying, Kathy, what about your kids? You're a bad mother?
No, I would, I would hear that all the time. And I used to get asked a lot, what do your children think about your books? What does your husband think about your books? And I can't imagine somebody asking, James Patterson or someone like that. What do your wife and children think of your books? Who cares?
Right.
They're proud of me. They're they are the fabric of my life. But what I do is what I do. And so I always love it when I read about a male writer who says, well, I get up at 9 or I get up at 8 and I don't take a break until lunch. And then I work out and then I have my dinner. I'm like, who is fixing your lunch? And who is enabling this wonderful life where you can write 12, 14 hours a day?
Yeah. Well, men are artists. The muse calls to them, and women are just bestsellers. So the pandemic, you had that too. You experienced that 2 miles away from
I did.
And I remember talking to you on the phone. You're driving to Seashell Island. And
we have no shells on Tybee, by the way. The shells suck here.
They're crushed. That's all. Yeah. That's the sand. It's just crushed shell. Mm-hmm. So also I'm allergic to seafood. I thought I'd throw that in case you were going to invite me down there. But
I don't like fish. So,
Perfect. But so you were in traffic and we were talking on the phone. And I said, wow, this is just, I thought it would be so easy to write because you have all this forced time and how lucky we are because most people don't have that. But all I did was piss away my time. And you said, oh, no, I finished my book early. And I was like, fuck you. And I've actually said that to other authors. I've told them, and they've said, tell her to go fuck herself. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that again. But we're here to talk about your book. Which is The Cucumber.
The newcomer.
And I've got this right here, The Cucumber. Yeah. Oh, let me do it right. And it's about a woman.
You see this?
You can see this? Like when Stella got her groove back with a cucumber. Oh, here's your author photo. So tell me about why cucumbers. I know that you have your cookbook. But why? Is there another facet of yourself in that in your beach house?
I know where you live.
Yeah.
And despite the sentry towers, I will. Yes. I have a pirate sword right here, and I am going to. Yes, I will. You'll wake up one morning.
I was going to say this book is delicious, but I want to make sure everybody gets to see. Everything's backwards on here. Your author photo.
That is not my author photo.
Yeah. Do you know how easy it was to find a picture of you online where you're going like this? So
I always have my mouth open.
Travel and Leisure says this book is brimming with small town drama, big time secrets, and cucumbers.
That was last year's book, but thanks.
Oh, okay. Hello Summer is another gem by the always wonderful Mary Kay Cucumber. I could go on, but
please don't. Please don't.
Tell us. Oh, wait. And I also found this picture online. Whoops, wrong way.
Yeah,
that's my favorite one.
I know. I look like I was inflated.
Yeah, it looks like you found the right one.
Yeah, it looks like I was inflated.
So, what was the?
What's your question, by the way?
What was the inspiration for this work of cucumberic art?
The Newcomer is a story about a young woman. Her name is Letty, and she, at the beginning of the book, she pulls up to an old mom and pop vintage Florida motel, like some of us stayed in as youngsters. And on the Florida West Coast, where I grew up, the town is Treasure Island. It's a real town where they don't no longer have pirates, but maybe did. And she's on the run from the law, and she's on the run from the man she believes murdered her sister. And she has her sister's 4-year-old daughter in the back seat, Maya. And she's terrified and she's exhausted. She's been driving all night. And she ends up at this mom and pop motel. She doesn't really know why she's there. Those are my dogs.
This is real professional, Kathy. I hope there's not a cucumber out there. All right, so let's not let this interrupt us. So this woman's just murdered her sister and kidnapped her niece. Go ahead.
Her sister's ex-boyfriend, she believes, has murdered her sister, and she's on the run. She's found her sister's body on the floor of her townhouse in Manhattan, and she grabs the kid. She does what her sister said. Her sister always told her. The sister had a very bitter, contentious breakup from the boyfriend. Now something's playing back. What the hell is that? I don't know. And her sister always said, if anything happens to me, if anything bad happens to me, it's Evan, the boyfriend. And he did it. And so take Maya and run.
Spoiler alert.
That's not a spoiler. Take Maya and run, because if anything happens, it's him. And she shows her sister Letty what she calls her go bag. And it's got some cash in it and some jewelry. And so when she finds her sister's body, that's the thing she thinks of. She finds the go bag, she grabs it, she takes her sister's Mercedes and lights out of New York. And in the go bag, she finds an old magazine article about this motel down in Florida. She doesn't know why her sister has it, but that's where she decides she'll go. She doesn't know if her sister had a connection to this place, the Murmuring Surf. And so that's where she heads. And so there's mystery. There's a little bit of I think there's a little thriller element to it. There's some bad guys. There's some bad guys circling her. A little bit of romance, and I hope it's a fun beach read. I just want my readers to, have characters they care about and keep turning the pages, put them in a place they want to be, but they forget everything else. I want my readers, because I write a beach read, I want them to forget everything else that's going on around them and just live in the world of that book.
And I want my readers to be scared shitless.
And you know what? You did that really well, because I did not sleep after Pieces of Her.
Well, we should also mention that the woman was murdered with a cucumber, and that's where the
not at all
title comes into play. The cucumber.
No cucumber.
So that sounds like fun. Is that something you ever think when you're like watching a Dateline and like somebody gets murdered and their best friend says, she said if she's ever murdered? Don't you think at some point, like, hey, if you're out there and you've told a friend, if I get murdered, it's this person, maybe tell the police. Like, have a conversation. Don't tell your best friend. I mean, because if you tell it to the police, they might say, hey, husband of this person, because it's always the husband. Hey, maybe you should be aware that she's told us if she ever gets murdered, it's going to be you, right?
Well, when I was a reporter, I covered a couple stories in Atlanta, and then, of course, it did end up being the husband, where the marriage or the relationship was in bad shape, and the victim, the wife, the mom, told family members, if anything happens to me, it's him. I mean, the story,
of course.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, I wrote a book called Homemade Sin. One of my Callahan mysteries was inspired by that story. I can remember so clearly. We were actually in Florida on vacation, and I saw on the news this horrific story about this beautiful blonde young mom with 2 little boys. She pulled into her garage after Thanksgiving weekend, was met by 2 masked men who forced her back into her car with her terrified little boys in the back seat. They drove her out into the middle of nowhere and shot her in the head. And she had told her sisters, if anything happens to me, it was Fred. So domestic violence is, I think you've written a little bit about that, Karin.
Yeah, it's sort of one of my themes. It makes me wonder how many women, because it's mostly women, actually say that and they don't end up murdered. Is it like a lot? So the ones that actually do end up murdered, they're like, well, damn, that rarely happens.
When I was first starting to write mysteries, I met a woman who did a lot of divorce work. And I was talking to her for research for a book. And I said, did you ever have a divorce that ended up like that? And she said, I have one that haunts me. I was representing the wife, and it was a bitter divorce. And they argued over custody of the children for like 2 years. And then she said, out of the blue, the husband called her one day and said, look, I'm sorry. It didn't mean to be this ugly. It didn't have to be this way. And the husband called her and said, look, let's meet for lunch and let's let bygones be bygones. And the wife called the lawyer, whose name is Donna, and said, Donna, he wants to meet me. And Donna said, under no circumstances do you go meet him by yourself. Do not do it. And, the wife wanted to believe that the ugliness was gone. And she disappeared. And it was years before they found the body and arrested the husband. So, yeah.
There was a spate of killings in the UK of men killing their own children and saying it was the wife's fault because she was divorcing them.
Right.
And weirdly, not weirdly, because we know people, a lot of people were sympathetic with the men.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, the wife, she was a crazy bitch. So, she drove him to do this. It's funny to me, not funny. Haha. We give men so much power, so much control. We let them run the world basically, but then they get upset about joint custody and they murder their children. We're like, oh, the poor guy, he just snapped,
Yeah. And that's kind of a little bit what happens in The Newcomer.
Wow. That sounds a lot like the book I read called The Cucumber. Go on.
In The Newcomer, Letty's sister, Tanya, has been in a relationship with this guy, Evan. He's a sleazy real estate entrepreneur in New York. And Letty's Tanya is no angel. She's drinking, and after she has the baby, she can't lose weight, so she's taking pills and drinking and acting erratically. And of course, Evan gets tired of that and decides, he's going to move on. They've never married, but he has signed the baby's birth certificate. And he has decided that he is going to get custody of this child. And that the child is basically just another possession to him. And so the custody battle gets more and more contentious. And so that's kind of what happens. And it was interesting because I read for research, I read a lot of stories about really high-powered, high-profile divorce cases in New York of, really super rich couples going through a divorce, and the husband just insisting that I need to have custody of this child. The mother's unfit, and it's not always. There's certainly loving, concerned fathers, but the ones I was reading about, it was mostly a matter of control. It's about control.
I never had children that I know of.
Thank God.
It would be, I can't stand them. So I'd be like, sure, you can have them. Just give me the house. Right.
Yeah. Right.
At least the house has equity. The
children are going to take care of you when you're elderly, by the way.
Well, I heard a comedian talking about that because he had daughters and his friends had sons, and his friends were teasing him like, oh, I get to play football with my son. I get to do this with my son. And he was like, I'm playing the long game because your sons are going to put you in a home and my daughters are going to let me live with them.
Mm-hmm.
So as
your sons are going to marry evil bitches who are going to say, oh, just leave granddad where he is.
Yeah.
Let him drool on himself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. My daughter always
their
says
own grandfathers are fathers to take care of.
My daughter always says, you better be nice to me. I'm going to be the one choosing your nursing home.
I don't even mind like a Doris Duke situation because it looked like you took really good care of her. So, if anybody's looking to be a butler or something like that, just give me another 40 years and I'm your gal. Could be very lucrative. When you write about beach stuff, are you specifically thinking of your time in Florida or, what's up with that? Like, when you think of these stories, I know that when you first started writing them, you kind of thought it would be a little mystery, right? But with a different kind of theme, maybe. But like in your head, do you see the Atlantic? Do you see the Gulf? Do you see Tybee? Because these are all very different beaches.
It depends on the story. With The Newcomer, I knew that I wanted it to set it on my home beach where I grew up, in those mom and pop motels where my family used to stay on vacation. We used to stay at one called OC Villas for 2 weeks every summer. And we lived in St. Pete, but we didn't live on the Gulf. And so my family, we were 5 kids and 2 adults, we would cram into a 2-bedroom cottage at the Gulf. And we thought we were kings. It had air conditioning and had a pool and a rec room. And we thought we were living the good life. Now, I don't know how much my mom loved the good life because she was cooking most nights, although she thought it was a vacation too. She wouldn't have done it if she hadn't. But this story needed to be set on the Gulf beaches. Now, next summer's book is set in Savannah, partly in Savannah and partly on Tybee. And last summer's book, which was called Hello Summer, was set in a fictional town on the panhandle of Florida. So
because these are all very different beaches. Like the Gulf
Yes.
has the white sand, Tybee has the deadly seashells that can cut you. Savannah is sort of darkish, dirty, you might say. Of course, the Gulf has the red tide that can kill you. All of it can kill you.
Have you ever been to the beach, Karin?
We also used to go to the beach every year, whether we wanted to or not. And normally I would get a spanking at some point during the 6-hour drive. And then I would get car sick and throw up. And my dad, he didn't believe in turning the air on because it wasted gas. So we just had the windows down. And my sisters and I would get in slap fights until we couldn't move because our legs had seared into the vinyl seats.
My mother could turn around from the front seat. They would be in the front seat of a Ford Fury, and the 5 of us crammed, butt cheek to butt cheek in the back. Somebody would do something, scream something. My mom had a book and a lit cigarette. And if somebody screamed really loudly, she would whip off a flip-flop and just slap. It didn't matter who'd done what. She could just...
Well, someone is guilty of something. Well, my dad had a cigarette and a glass of scotch, and he drove with his knees. And we weren't allowed to stop.
No.
Because you would get murdered, I guess.
I just always wanted to go to a Stuckey's. Someday soon, you would see those pecan roll signs, and we'd say, please, can we have a Stuckey's? No.
But that means kids, there's your vacation money.
Yeah.
But we would go to the condo, and I don't know if you've noticed, but my complexion is best described as Elmer's glue.
You're a little on the pasty side.
They would all go out on the beach, and I would stay in the room in the air conditioning and read. And I would never see them. So it's given me a lifelong love of hotel rooms, actually. So yes, I have. And we did stay in some of those motels. My dad had property on the Panhandle. and in Panama City. And
well, that's why you're such an heiress.
Well, you know how to be a millionaire is be a billionaire who invests in Florida real estate. So every time we went down there, he had to fix everything because he wasn't going to pay a handyman because those Florida people are wily. So that was how he spent. He would be fixing stuff, and I would be in the hotel room reading. So fantastic. We still live like that today. But thank you for asking about me. But this is about you, Kathy, Mary Kay, and your fantastic book, The Cucumber. The Cucumber. Agree to disagree. So who's your favorite character in this book? Do you hate that question? I kind of hate that question because I love whoever I'm writing about, right?
Yeah, I don't hate it, but I never know how to answer it. I like Letty a lot. There's a codger in this book. I love writing codgers.
Yeah.
He's annoying.
Is he a beach codger or a city codger?
He's a snowbird. He's a snowbird who's come down to Florida for the season. You know, they come down from Buffalo and Cleveland for the winter to get out of the snow and the ice. And they've been coming to the Murmuring Surf for years. So they all have their same unit that they get every year, and they're very, very protective of that. And they get in pissing matches over who gets to play shuffleboard at what time. And so those characters were fun to write.
Is it because they're mostly based on you? Do you feel like a deep connection when you're like, get off my lawn?
I feel a deep connection to the kinds of people I grew up with growing up in St. Pete. I worked summers for the St. Pete Times classified advertising front desk. And so these little ladies would come in, they'd taken 4 buses across town, and they would have a little billfold that was, bound up with 15 rubber bands, just in case their money fell out. Rubber bands would keep it in there. And they come to the front desk and they'd say, my paper didn't come yesterday. I didn't get my Sunday paper. Oh, okay. Funny. Last week, you also didn't get your Sunday paper. Okay, well, what would you like me to do? Well, I need the TV dial. They didn't subscribe to the paper, but they would take 3 buses across town to get the free TV dial.
Yep.
And you had to admire that kind of chicanery.
I was thinking about this the other day, how much the TV guide, how important that was in our lives, right? Because my sister, we would get it in the beginning of the week, and my sisters and I would circle what we wanted to watch because we got to choose one night. And so, I would watch the Dukes of Hazzard, and then they would want to watch Donnie and Marie. And then I would throw up. I can throw up pretty much whenever I want. So it'd be like
on demand.
Yeah, right. In the middle of Donnie coming out and singing to his sister, who I actually thought was his lover. And I would just throw up. So that was my life.
That's fascinating, Karen.
Yeah.
Thanks
hidden talents.
Mm-hmm. What would you say is your best? I'm interested in people's superpower. Obviously, yours is vomiting on demand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, mine is. I have a super sniffer. I sniff out everything.
Do you have that syndrome or whatever where you're sensitive to smells and sound and all that?
Not sound, but smells. Like I can check into a hotel room and go, okay, somebody was smoking unfiltered Cools in here back in '88. Damn. Or I can say, yeah, there's mold in that air conditioning unit. We're going to have to change rooms.
I am allergic to a lot of things. So I don't know what it is, but I'll get hives. So maybe I should.
You must be a joy to live with.
I'm actually, I spend a lot of time alone for a reason. Yeah.
Well, the guards in the Sentry Towers are.
Do you miss touring? I do. I don't miss the travel. I miss, because I'm clearly not as old as you.
Clearly.
But, like, for years I've been seeing the same people. Like Murder by the Book, seeing McKenna. I love McKenna. Gotta say, love her dog more. I'm just going to be honest.
I like Johnny Cakes.
I didn't get to see it. But like you get used to seeing people like Barbara Peters and or wherever, and that's kind of what I miss. And a lot of my readers are return listeners.
It's not this. I mean, this is the best we can do at this time. But yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years now, and I have rituals. I go to Murder by the Book in Houston, and we go out for Tex-Mex and margaritas, and then I go over to Page and Palette in Fairhope and have a friend there. We always have dinner in the same restaurant. It's like our good luck thing. And I go to Rehoboth Beach and go to Browse About Books, and I have my favorite.
Rehoboth Beach.
There's a restaurant down the street from Browse About Books, Zupa Damara or something Damara, where the most gorgeous gay men sit in the restaurant, and they are so chic and so gorgeous. And I love having dinner in there and having a cocktail and eavesdropping on them. I love meeting, this, if you're lucky, your fans come to see you and you talk to them about what's going on in their life. And I do miss that. I miss it tremendously. So I am doing, I'm doing a handful of events. I'm going to be down in Florida with, I have to say, somebody that you're responsible for me knowing about. Lisa Unger.
Yes, St. Pete. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, we're going to be in conversation at Tombolo Books next Tuesday night. St. Pete's my hometown. And I met Lisa through you, and we had Lisa on Friends in Fiction, the Wednesday night Facebook Live show we do. And I read Confessions on the 745. And, I'm afraid of things. I'm afraid of your creepy books, but I read them.
Mm-hmm.
That book knocked me out.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Knocked me out. And so I have been reading a few more thrillers. That last one of yours totally freaked me out.
You're welcome.
I'm never going to get in a car again without looking in the back seat.
You shouldn't. I don't know why you ever would. I think we have to let other people ask questions now.
Oh, good. Yeah. Do we have any questions?
We do. So somebody wanted to know, Mary Kay, you mentioned, your editor saying, hey, I want you to write a book called The Weekenders. I don't care what it is. I just want it to be The Weekenders. So do your titles come to you first, or do you work with the book and then come with the title?
It's different with every book. This time, Jen wanted me to write a book called The Weekenders. She suggested, she knows I have a thing for old Florida motels. She suggested the setting, and then I kind of took it from there. When I wrote Sunset Beach 2 years ago, there's a real Sunset Beach in St. Pete, and the setting was what intrigued me. When I was growing up, it was the hippie beach. I had a cousin who lived there, and I knew I would have a character who's working for her ambulance chasing father. The High Tide Club. I was having a lovely rosé-soaked lunch with my editor and agent in New York. We were talking about the next book, and my editor said, well, I like it when you write a book like Ladies' Night. That sounds like a fun book that readers want. And so we started, tossing ideas around. I came up with High Tide. Well, what? High Tide Club. Well, what is the High Tide Club? Well, it's a group of women who've known each other all their lives since they were teenagers, and now they're in their 80s. And they used to, when they were girls, they came from wealthy families, and they used to skinny dip at the high tide. So I think with every book, it's a different, sometimes it's the premise, sometimes it's the character. With Savannah Blues, it was definitely the character, Wheezy Foley, who I wanted to write about. Sometimes setting, sometimes character, sometimes plot.
How about, now as you're taking a drink, how about you, Karin? When do titles come into play for you when you're working on a book?
Well, they're very important to me because I think they define the book.
Yeah.
So I feel really close to them, and I generally, the thing that publishers do is they'll say, "Oh, well, Kathy, the Cucumber is a great title, but sales said they could sell even more if you call it The Newcomer." And then that's when you have to make a decision whether or not to believe them, because of course they're just lying. because the cucumber is awesome. But, for me, it really defines the work. So something like false witness, it works on many different levels because, who the false witness is in the book depends on how the story is told. So I just like to play around about that. And The Silent Wife, I thought, a lot of men would buy it just to see if there was like a secret. It just, that's how it comes for me. I don't think I've ever had anyone direct a title like that. But I would be open to it.
I didn't think I would be open to it. And the first book I did with Jen, she had a terrible title for the book she wanted me to write. And it was called Sea Change. And I said, that sounds like a menopause book. Nobody wants to read about menopause. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I was new to the house, new to this editor, but I said, I want to write a book called Summer Rental. And she hated that title. So we went back and forth. And finally it was about ready to be in the catalog that would go out to booksellers. And she said, well, what if we let the sales reps decide? And I said, well, okay. But now are they going to decide because you're their boss? And she said, no, I won't tell them which title is better. So she called me on Monday and she goes, okay, everyone hated Sea Change and they loved Summer Rental.
I thought you were going to say like C word.
Yeah.
Like C word. Yeah.
Or sea cucumber.
Maybe.
So Melissa wants to know, Mary Kay, do you ever think that you'll have any of your other characters return in recent book, or you'll have like recurring characters?
I never plan it. I think it might happen. The protagonist of Sunset Beach, she becomes an investigator for her father, the ambulance chaser, personal injury lawyer. So I have a title for a book. And I would like to have her come back, but we'll see. Next summer's book is a standalone. So I think it'll be, I might, because it's set in Savannah though, I might bring in Wheezy Foley. I don't know.
Nice. I love when authors do that, even if it's just like we're going to go antiquing and they wander into the store and you mention it. So just get to know that they're like still out there and still having adventures.
Yeah. I kind of like a cameo every once in a while. And then when I wrote the High Tide Club, I had a character from Save the Date who was not a major character in that book. And I gave her what I thought was kind of a preppy, obnoxious name, which was Brooke. But then when I went to write the High Tide Club, I was like, oh, Brooke has to be the protagonist of this book. And I have to find a reason to like her.
So question for both of you. We've had a few people ask this. What's something that you've read recently that you love? Let's start with Karin.
Why me?
Well, I was thinking you would say The Newcomer.
I think it's called The Cucumber. I mean, it's right there. I read the Lady Bird Johnson biography, which Kathy, I think you would like it. It was really fascinating.
I would like that.
But I have this title written down because I can't pronounce the last part of it. The Death of Vivek Ohai, I think. It's by a Nigerian writer whose last name is Emezi. When I read My Sister the Serial Killer, that voice was so amazing and so fresh. I thought I need to find more writers from that part of the world.
Right.
This was really amazing. It's got incest, a non-binary character, hatred of the other. It's like hitting all my buttons right now. It's really fantastic. But if you don't like that, Lady Bird Johnson, also fascinating.
And so similar.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
I read The Rose Code recently, Kay Quinn, and I was so knocked out by it, I wrote her a fangirl email.
Did she answer?
Yeah, she did. She's very nice. I loved that book. A book I read last year, and again, it was by an author that I met doing a virtual event with, was Leanne Dolan's the Sweeney Sisters.
Mm-hmm.
It's about three sisters. Their father is a recently deceased very famous John Cheever-like novelist. And they discover after his death that there's a fourth Sweeney sister. And I love that. I love her voice. I love her writing. I really enjoyed that book. And I've got a huge stack of stuff to read because we do this weekly Friends in Fiction show on Wednesday nights. So, Karen, when am I going to get a copy of? When am I going to get a copy of Reese's Pieces of False Witnesses?
If you can find my house, I'll give it to you. But Chris, you should have Chris Bojalian on too, because he's got.
We did. We had him on last week
for the Witches book.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. All right. Well, then that's all the advice I have for you.
Yeah. Yeah, he was our guest last week.
He's a sweetheart.
So Mary Kay, if there's anybody out there that's watching that doesn't know what Friends in Fiction are, can you give them a quick little rundown of what it is?
Yeah, it's a Wednesday night Facebook Live program. There are 5 authors. We've known each other. Most of us have known each other a long time, and we talk about our books. We talk about books that are new books or debut. We try to do a lot of debut novels because we want to help people just, trying to break into the publishing world and make their names known. We do it in support of independent booksellers. So we have an independent bookseller partner, and the author of the week chooses what bookstore, and the bookstore, they can click on a link and order the book right there. And it's every Wednesday night. Tomorrow night is the launch of The Newcomer. So there's lots of silliness planned. And I think there'll be some cameo appearances by some people from my past.
Not me, because I was told it was a cucumber. Have you had Jennifer Hillier on? She's fantastic.
We have not.
Alexia Gordon, also fantastic.
I know there's so many fantastic, and we are booked into now they tell me we're booked into March.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's like so many books, so little time, and we're trying to have on authors that have a big following, so people will watch. But we're also trying to have on authors maybe people don't know that much about, and we're trying to have a diverse list of guests. Trying to be cognizant of that. So yeah, it's like, wow, there's like a tidal wave of books.
It's great. So if anybody's out there watching, if you haven't, if you just search Facebook for Friends in Fiction, there's so many readers there, and they share recommendations, and they ask, hey, has anybody read this? Or, I'm looking for something like this. There's so much great book content there. If you guys haven't checked it out, you definitely should. So we've got a couple more questions before we head out. We've had a few people ask, do you guys get to choose or have any input on who reads your audiobooks?
I do.
Yeah.
I love mine, Kathleen. Though she was saying DeKalb County instead of DeKalb. And during all the election stuff, of course, DeKalb featured prominently. And she was like, I can't believe it.
Cobb County, where we both live. Yeah, Kathleen McInerney has been reading mine for the past, I don't know, I think since I went to St. Martin's. Yeah, I mean, usually if you have a good agent, you have approval of the narrator of the audiobooks.
I think people like Kathleen reading mine, don't you think? Because I advocate for her because people say they really like it, and plus she's nice. Yeah.
It was interesting. My publisher, they pay a lot of attention to what people say, to the people's reactions to the readers.
Mm-hmm.
So for my books, they wanted an accent that sounded almost all my books are set in the South. Now with The Newcomer, they're set in the South, but Letty is not Southern. But there's nothing worse than a inauthentic, wretched Walmart Southern accent.
Yeah. My first reader, I mean, she was really nice, but it sounded like they'd just shaken a trailer.
Yeah.
Like whoever dropped out, they're like, oh, knee dang dong.
So Karen, you've been so gracious tonight to lend your time to interview Mary Kay. Before we head out, can you tell everybody a little bit about False Witness?
Yes, it's about 500 pages. So it's about two sisters, and one is a lawyer and one is not. And they had something really horrible happen to them, which happens in the first chapter. So I can't tell you. But if you read the first chapter, you don't have to read the rest of it. Should I tell people who did it?
No.
Oh, okay. So it's a thriller. It's got all my stuff in it that people really love, and it talks about all the things I guess people who read me love to read about. If they don't read me, then they don't obviously love anything.
Is it a standalone?
It's a standalone, but also it's written during the pandemic.
Oh.
It's not about the pandemic. It's just during it. And when the pandemic started, I did little interviews online, and I would ask authors, are you going to write about the pandemic? And they're like, oh no, I write it for escape. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't do this. But then Mike Connolly said he was going to do it. And I'm like, okay, well, if Mike's going to do it and he's going to go first. So he wasn't pilloried. So people were wearing masks, and I just wanted to kind of I loved Pale Horse, Pale Rider when I read it in college. Catherine Ann Porter. It's a short novel, and it talks about her experience. It's kind of a fictionalized experience of her when she had the Spanish flu, and I had not heard about the Spanish flu until I read that in college. And I thought, I want to do that without all the horrible things that happened to her. I want to kind of capture what life is like the hand sanitizer smells like tequila because the distillery started pumping it out, or, that people wear masks, or that, they're not close or whatever. And eventually there was a courtroom scene I had to write. And as I was writing, I was having to anticipate that courts would be open by the time it published. And then the vaccines came. So it was like, fuck. I was the only person who wasn't happy about that. I mean, at the time, everybody's unhappy now. But so I had to go back in and incorporate that. So it was just really difficult. And I actually read a lot about the polio vaccine to kind of anticipate what people's reaction would be now. And it's exactly the same. People were like, oh, they're going to put radiograph stuff in the polio vaccine and it's going to be able to follow me. I mean, and everybody knows microchips are in Viagra. So I don't know why it would be in the vaccine, but stuff like that, the same hesitancy. I'm fully vaccinated. Kathy, I know you're fully vaccinated.
Yeah.
So that kind of hesitancy that people had, it's exactly how it was when polio was visibly horrible. It's not like today where somebody goes in the hospital and you don't really see what was happening. And it was the same with the Spanish flu because you couldn't get in a hospital and there was no HIPAA law. And so you literally would see, we kind of had a sanitized interaction in some ways, especially compared to India or Brazil, where we haven't really seen how horrific it is. So I wanted to just kind of capture that, but also put it in the context of a really heart-pounding story. And Kathy, you'll relate to this because before the pandemic, I had to figure out how to have a mother who was not living with her teenage daughter without people hating her. And because of the pandemic, her daughter lives in the suburbs and she's a lawyer. So she has to interface with people all day and she doesn't want to expose her daughter. So it worked out in that regard.
I'm glad the pandemic worked out so well for you, Karen.
So
it's awesome for you.
Thanks, Kathy. I know it was hard for you in your beach house. So that's basically what the book is not about the pandemic, but the pandemic is happening during.
But we both wrote sister stories.
It's true. I write a lot of sister stories.
I've only ever written one before because I had two sisters and it felt too close and it felt too personal.
Yeah. Oh, I don't care.
We know.
So as we mentioned, False Witness comes out July 20th. We will have signed copies if you want to pre-order. I have dropped a link in the comments if you want to pre-order that. But we have been talking about Mary Kay Andrews' new book, The Newcomer, which we do also still have signed copies of. So I hope you'll come in and visit us and pick one up. We also have copies of Hello Summer, which has recently come out in paperback. And since Mary Kay sent us book plates, we can give you book plates for the paperback copies of Hello Summer. We have a handful of the little Newcomer motel room keychains left, so if you get your pre-orders in quick, you will get one of those. If you joined the chat late, once we are done, Facebook and YouTube will archive it, so you'll be able to rewatch it. Oh, as I said in the comments, I love a woman who just pulls out a pirate sword and is ready to go.
That's cultural appropriation.
I will cut a bitch, Karen, and you know that about me.
Bring it, cucumber.
So, Kathy, last question before we head out this evening. So, do you have what's coming out next for you?
You know, I'm not supposed to say.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you could say that or not. So, if you can say that, yay, and if not, it's okay.
I can tell you that there's going to be a book in the fall.
Cool.
A surprise novella.
It's called The Zucchini, and it's sort of a sequel to The Cucumber. Spoiler.
Wouldn't the sequel to The Cucumber be The Pickle, though?
Yeah, it's the gherkin.
It's Kathy's book, man. She's the writer.
I'm not supposed to say anything else about it for another week or two.
Okay.
But
What's gonna happen? They're gonna kill you?
Well, see, that's
I'm trying to sell the newcomer, Karen. Could you cut me a break and let me just sell this book?
All right, buy the cucumber. Everybody get the cucumber.
So that's one of the funny things about, virtual events, and people have asked us for years if we'd stream stuff in store, and we never did because, in a Q&A, somebody could ask that question in the bookstore full of just people, and you could potentially answer that question. But now, because this recording is going to be kind of out there, people have to be kind of a little bit more careful about what they say if things haven't been contracts haven't been signed. So sometimes you don't quite get the gossip that you would get if we were all just hanging out at the bookstore.
Oh, the contract has been signed, and it will be out. I will tell you that I'm pretty sure there's not a single F-bomb in this entire book.
Fuck. Well, I'm not getting it.
All right. So that means everybody stay tuned. In the next week or so, we'll get some more news. But Kathy, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was so much fun to at least get to visit with you this way, even if we can't do it in the store.
I know. And we will have margaritas soon.
Yes,
together.
We'll have to make up for lost time. And Karen, again, thank you so much for joining us and chatting with us tonight.
My pleasure.
So
Bye, Karen. I'll be strolling by your house soon.
I've got my AK.
Okay.
Y'all have a good night. Thanks so much.